Hey guys, today we're going to talk about some wars of religion. So, we're talking about the wars that are going to happen in Europe following the Protestant Reformation. The reason why I have you starting here on the Daily Focus scale is because I wanted to take a look at this family tree. So, um, at the top, you have Ferdinand and Isabella. So, Spain doesn't become Spain until those two kingdoms come together. Okay, so when they get married, Spain pretty much becomes Spain as we know it, becomes the Kingdom of Spain. So they're going to have two daughters, Joanna and Catherine, and both of them are going to have very influential children. So Joanna is going to have Charles V, who becomes the Holy Roman Emperor. He's the one that he doesn't want Henry VIII to get his divorce. Okay, so he's the one that pressures the Pope to not allow that, which we talked about in the Protestant Reformation. And then Catherine of Aragon is their other daughter. Okay, and she is going to obviously marry Henry VIII. And so Charles doesn't let him get a divorce because that's his aunt. Okay, and these two have a child, Mary. Okay, so that's her right here, who is cousins with Philip, who they're going to get married to. So Philip is going to be the King of Spain. Mary will eventually be the Queen of England. Today we're going to talk about Philip more, and then we'll get into Mary with the next set of notes. But to answer the warm up question, so the reason why they got married was not because they loved each other, it was because they wanted to bring their two kingdoms together peacefully. Okay, and they were both very, very Catholic, and so one of the things that they had a shared interest in was making Europe Catholic again. Okay, all right, so let's get this started. So the wars of religion. So we're going to start with France, and then we're going to move and talk about Spain and the Dutch. So the French wars of religion. So by 1560, Calvinism and Catholicism became militant or combative. So basically, this revolution or the Reformation did not become really violent until Calvinism, Catholicism start to become militant. So that's when they started to fight each other. So they're competing with each other for followers, and eventually that's going to lead to violence. Okay, and so the Huguenots are the French Calvinists. Okay, so Huguenots are the French Protestants influenced by John Calvin. They only made up about 7% of the population, but 50% of the nobility were Huguenots. Okay, and so this includes the House of Bourbon. This is important because we're going to talk about the start of the House of Bourbon in France, which will eventually be the rulers. So the Bourbon dynasty, the Bourbon family ruled Navarre, which is a region in France, and then you can see it's right down here. Okay, so this was part of France at the time, and then also, well, it's just really this. Um, and then, so anyway, they're next in line for the throne. So the Valois monarchy, who are the current rulers of France, were very, very Catholic, but the House of Bourbon are Huguenots. Okay, so this is the issue. And so there's a group in France known as the Ultra Catholics. You cannot make these names up. The Ultra Catholics, they also strongly oppose the Huguenots. Okay, so this is going to lead to violence. So many townspeople were willing to help the nobles weaken their monarchy because they didn't like having the strong monarch. And they became a base of opposition against the Catholic king. So we're going to see civil war in France for about 30 years. And then Henry of Navarre, that's this guy right here, he is going to emerge as the king in the end. Okay, so in 1589, he is going to emerge as King Henry IV of France. Okay, and he's the leader of the Huguenots. So the problem is France is still super Catholic. So he knows he's not going to win over the people if he remains a Huguenot. So his mother was a Huguenot. So he denounces Catholicism. And because he knows that as a Huguenot he would never have the support of the French people. And so in 1598, one of the things he's going to do is he's going to issue the Edict of Nantes, and it will recognize Catholicism as France's official religion. But, this is a huge but, it will give the Huguenots the right to worship and to have all political privileges. So this is one of the early steps to freedom of religion, is that you can choose Catholic or Calvinism, basically. So you can choose either one of those, and if you want to be a Huguenot, that's okay. You still have all the political privileges you would have if you were a Catholic. Okay, so we're gonna watch a short video here. It's done by a girl. It's really hokey and silly, but you can see it's a midterm review project. But it's got good information about Henry, and it's got some pretty funny stories too. So make sure the volume's on. Okay.
Alright, so there's this guy named Henry IV, right? And he does some stuff, but the only stuff that's important is the stuff that happens while he's the King of France. Let's skip all the boring stuff because I don't want to draw or narrate longer than I have to. Like, I made this so you wouldn't have to see my face, and I wouldn't have to make an entire movie trailer! So, Henry becomes Henry III of Navarre by marrying this girl, Margaret Valois, who's like #goals, but then psych, her mom's psycho, and orders all the Huguenots to die on their wedding day, so their marriage turns into St. Bartholomew's Massacre. Lovely. He gets imprisoned instead of dying because he says, no, I'm not Calvinist, because his mom was. And since he's so charming, he sneaks his way out of there in 1576. No, I kid you not. He was so nice that people in the court who were supposed to hate him were like, aw, he's kind of cute. Like, what is this? I want that charm. He got out of there faster than I can run away from my responsibilities. Boom! 1584 happens. The Duke of Anjou dies, and that means that Henry is now the King of France. So, now he's Henry III of Navarre and the 4th of France, simultaneously. Yep, that's already way too confusing for me, and we're not even in his religious stuff yet. If that's how I'm doing, I hope you guys are still alive out there, and not, like, dying of boredom. Sorry about that. Alright, so, as a Huguenot king for a Catholic France, oh, yeah, did I mention that as soon as he gets out of jail, he goes back to being a Huguenot? Well, yeah, that's definitely a thing. So, because of that, things aren't gonna go too well. So he says, hey, I'll be Catholic. But he kind of winks at the Huguenots and says, don't worry, you're my true boo. I kid you not, this is the literal definition of the politique, and this is how he kind of worms his way onto the throne. He starts to look better when he makes the Edict of Nantes, which helps with religious tolerance. Yeah, he would know all about that. What even is his religion at this point? Protestantism? Catholicism? Satanism? This treaty works because it basically puts politics above religion, so that it doesn't get in the way. And France is the first country to do that. He also fights and wins a war with Spain, because Philip II is stupid, by making the Treaty of Bourbon, so that's a good thing. Then, our man decides to get all flirtasioso and suggests marrying Gabrielle. Oh yeah, did I mention that he up and gets the Pope to annul his previous marriage? I guess it's difficult to trust the daughter of someone who tried to kill you. I'm done! So, Gabrielle has 3 of his children, and that secures his dynasty for a bit. But he doesn't get married to her because she dies in childbirth. So, instead, he marries Marie de Medicis, and she has Louis XIII. Yay, babies. Okay, but Louis XIII starts ruling when he was 9, and so he appoints a guy to help him out called Cardinal Richelieu. But then get this, they both die and leave the country in the hands of a 5-year-old. Henry, this is what happens when you don't raise your kids well. But Mina, you say, a country being run by a 5-year-old, that kind of sounds like our country for the next 4 years. And then I say, we're getting off topic. Oh yeah, did I mention that Henry IV is also kind of good with a sword? Yeah, let's just put a little military badge in him, right there. This military knowledge helps him to fortify France's border, while at the same time making his army stronger. So basically at this point, everybody loves him. The nobility think he's great. The Catholics are convinced that he's on their side. I mean, remember, he kind of goes back to being a Huguenot once he secured his place on the throne. But then in 1593, he kind of goes back to being Catholic, because the Pope was like, yeah, you're excommunicated. Then, to end the problem once and for all, he has his poor little baby Louis XIII be Catholic. Everyone else loves him too, because he reorganized and aided in the recovery of the economy with the help of the Duke of Sully. He also ended religious civil war with the Edict of Nantes. He helped strengthen the agriculture, helped to lower peasant taxes, and helped to build roads and canals. Alliances were struck with many different countries, including Sweden, different Swiss cantons, and different Protestant states in Germany. Trade flourished as a result of these new alliances, promoting the manufacturing of more goods like silk and glassware. Okay, wow, that's the most intelligent part I've uttered this entire video. That's my quotient for the week. He was actually just about to go to Paris to turn it into a center of art and education, but then he was assassinated by a crazy Catholic Roman. The end.
All right, so there's that. So Henry, pretty good ruler. He brought a lot of peace and prosperity to the people, which was good. So you can see that he did a pretty good job. He will die at a decently young age, so his son is going to be 9 when he becomes king, and we'll talk about him. And then Henry's grandson Louis XIV is crazy, but fun to talk about too. So we'll talk about him a little bit later. So all right, so moving on. So moving on to Philip of Spain. So Philip II of Spain, he's ruled from 1556 to 1598, and he was the greatest supporter of militant Catholicism. His nickname is going to be the Most Catholic King. And he wanted to consolidate control over all of his lands. So when he became king, he's not only king of Spain, he's also king of the Netherlands. So they were known as the Spanish Netherlands at the time. And then he had positions in Italy and obviously the Americas. So at this point, we didn't really talk about exploration, but at this point, the Americas have been conquered mostly by Spain, okay, and obviously Brazil by Portugal, but everybody else is Spanish. Um, so anyway, so he's going to insist on strict adherence to Catholicism and support for the monarchy. So he wanted his people to be Catholic and obviously to support him. And so Spain saw itself as a nation of God that was chosen to save Catholic Christianity from the Protestant heretics. Okay, so he saw it as his duty to God to convert Europe back to Catholicism. So he's going to form what's called the Holy League against the Turks. So the Turks are Muslims, by the way. And so they defeated their fleet. So he defeated their fleet in the famous Battle of Lepanto in 1571. And so Philip is going to have a lot of wealth and power very early on. And a lot of that's coming from the Americas. But also with this defeat of the Turks, it's going to help that out a lot. And so he's going to kind of get a big head about it. But he's going to lose quite a few battles as well. So, including one against Henry IV of France. So the Spanish Netherlands, so it's the Netherlands and Belgium today. They were very, very wealthy. And so he's making a lot of money off of them as well. And so the nobles there resented Philip trying to consolidate his control of the lands. So what was happening before is before he wanted to do this, the Netherlands were kind of left to themselves. They were still part of Spain, but they weren't ruled quite as harshly. And so once Philip wanted to consolidate that power, he became more involved with life there. So the people did not like that. So he also tried to crush Calvinism, obviously, and then the Calvinists began to destroy church statues. This is going to be known as the Iconoclastic Revolt. And so basically what happened there is if you go into a Calvinist church and you go into a Catholic church, they're very different. So if you go into a Calvinist church, there's not much there. It's very plain. There's pews, there's an altar, there's a cross, there's like a lectern, and maybe in some chairs up by the altar. That's about it. There's not a whole lot. And if you go into a Catholic church, much different because Catholics liked adornment. Okay, so usually there's a lot of statues almost always one of the Virgin Mary. There's the crucifix. There's that's usually behind the altar. There's always different saint statues and all kinds of pictures, and you have the stained glass windows, and I mean it's very adorned. Okay, so where Calvinist church is very plain, Catholics don't have that going on, and so this iconoclastic revolt kind of took that from basically the Calvinist idea that you shouldn't have all those things. Okay, so they're going to do that, and then in response to that revolt, um, Philip's going to send 10,000 troops in order to stop that rebellion. And so he's going to become much more involved in what's going on here. And that's the big thing, okay? And then the Dutch prince, William the Silent, he's also known as William of Orange. Okay, so Orange being a region in the Netherlands. They resisted Philip too, or he resisted Philip too. In 1609, they're going to sign a 12-year truce that stopped all the wars. And so the North will become the United Provinces of the Netherlands. And this is pretty much the Netherlands today. And then this will become Spanish Netherlands. Okay, so this right here is pretty much Belgium today. There's a little more like this side here. And then you can see Luxembourg there. So that those will become the more modern countries of Belgium and Luxembourg. But the Dutch will, or I guess the United Provinces of the Netherlands will become very, very wealthy because they're going to start to take some ships and they're going to start to go over to Asia, and they're going to take over a lot of those Portuguese trading posts, and they're going to make a lot of money off of trade with China and India. Okay, and so this becomes the core of that modern Dutch state. Okay. So Spain was the world's most populous empire, so he had the most amount of people. When Philip's reign ended in 1598, he seemed very powerful as a result of this, but he wasn't as much, especially towards the end, because he's going to get into several wars that are going to bankrupt him. Okay, so one of the things he's going to do is he is going to send he's going to create what's called the Spanish Armada, which we'll talk about more when we talk about England. And he's going to send them up to England. He's basically spend all kinds of money building up this navy. And he's going to send the ships up to England, and he's going to lose. And this was Elizabeth's greatest victory. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the next set of notes, like I said. And then, so he kind of had to go back with his tail tucked between his legs. He got into a very expensive war with France and Henry IV. And then he is going to spend more on wars, obviously, with the Dutch revolt. That went on for many, many years. So he spent a lot of money on that. And that doesn't get resolved until after he dies. So his successor will continue to overspend, now more on court life than war. But Spain's armed forces became out of date and the government was very inefficient. And so the real power is actually going to shift to England. Okay, and so that's going to happen with the defeat of the Spanish Armada. So when Elizabeth dies, she's going to die in 1603. When she dies, England's the most powerful country in the world. Okay, so it's just 5 years after he dies that, and really her becoming the most powerful country in the world, or England becoming the most powerful country in the world, happens pretty much in 1588 with the defeat of the Spanish Armada. So, okay. That is it for today. I hope you all have a good rest of the day. I will see you later.